Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining HCD's Grant Introduction Workshop for our Fair Housing and Hurricane Season Outreach. My name is Kristen Robinson. I am a senior planner for the City of Houston, and I work in the Housing and Community Development Department, and I'm really excited about our fair housing work that we're doing through this pilot program. I do want to cover a few housekeeping matters. First, our presentation will be recorded and we'll be posting this on our Fair Housing website and on our social media platforms. And we'll also be able to send this link to all of our attendees. So thanks again for joining us. Secondly, you can ask any questions at any time during the workshop, and you can do so by typing in the Q&A box, which is provided to the left of your screen. And you can toggle that on and off by clicking the box with the question mark in the middle. And if you're joining us in this workshop on a mobile device, you can also join the conversation or ask questions using a similar icon. It's going to be to the upper right-hand corner, and it also has a question mark in the middle of the box. And our last housekeeping item is our agenda. So during the workshop, we'll cover a brief overview of this program and just give you a little refresher on fair housing and natural disaster information. We'll also cover the eligible activities for this program, the program's procurement and application process, along with some helpful resources. And lastly, we'll try to answer some of those questions you may have that got posted in the Q&A box. And if you have any questions, don't forget you can type them in at any time during the workshop. So here's a little overview about our program. This pilot program is a grant for fair housing and hurricane season outreach that's going to be done on a reimbursement basis. And rather than using this program for case management or building affordable housing, this program is specifically for engagement, which includes outreach, marketing, and education or training. What we want our grant recipients to use this up to $10,000 for is to address fair housing and hurricane issues. We definitely want to continue to develop our relationships with community organizations and nonprofits by building new relations or enriching our existing relationships, and to just simply increase our engagement about the intersection of fair housing and resiliency in Houston. So let's talk a little bit about fair housing and why fair housing is so important. So why does housing even matter? Let's start with just a few facts about Houston's housing. By 2030, Houston will become the nation's third largest city, which means Houston is growing by population and also by size. Housing costs are growing at a faster rate than income levels. So from 2010 to 2018, area median sale prices for homes grew by 30%, and income grew only by 19%. That simply means that sale prices for homes are increasing at a rate much faster than incomes. Additionally, our very low and extremely low income populations are growing fast. So from 2010 to 2016, our low income populations increased by 16%, while our other household income or other income households increased by 6.2%. That means that low income populations are growing faster than all other income brackets. And lastly, where you live matters because of several things, but particularly children whose families move to better neighborhoods by the age of 13, they seem to have higher future earning projections than their peers. And they also had higher college attendance rates. These things are important to keep in mind when we're trying to remedy discriminatory behaviors and practices. And specifically, as housing prices increase and low-income populations continue to grow at faster rates, our fair housing and equal investment of these services or housing services and resources is becoming increasingly more important. Under the Fair Housing Act, our U.S. residents are protected from discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability or handicap. And despite the passage of the Fair Housing Act, marginalized groups are still often excluded from the access to quality and fair housing, which continues the legacy of discrimination. So that means fair housing is still important to us. And fair housing is more than just receiving equal treatment when you're looking for a home. It means that when a person is looking for a house, for housing assistance, or engaging in any other housing related activities, fair housing is at play. Fair housing plays a role in creating opportunities and determining a person's quality of life. So that means where you live matters, and because it affects all of these things from transit, culture, and social life, to education and job opportunities and health environments, we have to be concerned about fair housing. So when someone is discriminated, when someone is discriminated against, they're restricted from accessing these opportunities, and even more when disasters hit, because access to opportunities are even more restricted, particularly for people who already have limited access to these opportunities before the disaster. So here are just a few resources that can help anyone, including yourself, when you're experiencing housing discrimination. You can file a housing discrimination complaint with HUD by calling them at their number, which is on the screen, 1-800-669-9777, or you can go online and submit a housing complaint, a fair housing complaint. And both the Texas Workforce Commission and the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center are great resources. The Texas Workforce Commission can enforce fair housing or the Fair Housing Act in Texas, and the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center can also help people in the Houston area who are experiencing housing discrimination. So please take advantage of these resources and pass on that information to anyone else who is experiencing issues. So now we're going to switch gears, and my colleague Kimmy Johnson is going to talk about the intersection of fair housing and natural disasters, along with the program particulars.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kimmy Johnson, and I work for the City of Houston's Housing and Community Development Department as a senior planner. Now that we've covered fair housing and who's protected under the Federal Fair Housing Act, let's briefly discuss Houston's most recent natural disasters and the impacts they have on our most vulnerable communities. Since 2015, Houston has experienced 6 presidentially declared disasters. When Hurricane Harvey struck in 2017, many homes in Houston had already been damaged, and thousands of people had yet to recover from previous flooding events. The direct damage to homes caused by floodwaters and the indirect impacts resulting from flooding, such as displacement, had significant impacts on the broader housing market. And as seen in this slide, damage to residential buildings and the personal property in residential buildings, known as contents, resulted in billions of dollars. Impacts from Hurricane Harvey on the housing stock magnified several housing-related issues in Houston, like other cities had already been trying to solve around poverty, decreasing affordability, and aging infrastructure. As a result of Hurricane Harvey, an estimated 27.1% of households sustained some form of damage to their home or personal property. 1 in 10 residences were impacted by direct residential flooding in their homes. Floodwaters can significantly damage parts of the home, including the foundation, drywall, insulation, appliances, furniture, and other belongings, in many cases beyond repair. The number of households impacted and the large value of the damage illustrate how widespread the effects of flooding from Harvey were in the community. The impacts and damages were not just in areas that had identified risk of flooding. Instead, flooding happened everywhere. An estimated 13% of all impacted households had flood insurance. Households identified as having flood insurance had dollar value of damages totaling over $3.4 million. There is a great need to ensure Houstonians understand flood risk when choosing a place to live. Expanding Houston's awareness about flood insurance programs and encouraging residents to purchase flood insurance could assist with recovery efforts in future disasters, which may contribute to a quicker recovery for impacted households. Natural disasters combined with pre-existing social and economic injustices intensify barriers to home ownership, access to quality schools, jobs, and health care, and perpetuate the racial wealth gap. The vulnerable communities we'll discuss on the next few slides have the fewest resources to prepare for and recover from extreme weather events. We know that disasters sometimes affect where people live and can make their opportunities better or worse. It's important to note that hurricane preparation and resilience outreach for vulnerable communities requires a more targeted approach than outreach for the general population. For example, after a disaster, low-income households are among the most vulnerable because their limited ability to pay for alternative housing, fund home repair, or replace damaged contents of their homes. Lower-income households are the least likely to recover from a natural disaster in a reasonable time, which may also impact one's mental and physical health. For many persons with disabilities, homes are an important component to daily activities and transportation. Sometimes, housing units will require special accommodations, such as wider doorways for wheelchairs. Other times, persons with disabilities choose to live in certain homes because of their location to transportation. When displacement occurs because of a disaster, it brings more than just the inconvenience of a move. With the more restricted housing market because of the flood damage, it's even more difficult to find homes with appropriate accommodations needed for daily functions. This forces some persons with disabilities to live in homes that may restrict one person from normal activities or make life more difficult. In addition, many persons with disabilities are also on fixed incomes, showing an additional vulnerability for these groups. For these reasons, additional considerations for outreach or assistance may be needed for this population. Although age is not a protected class under the Fair Housing Act, it correlates with disability, as many seniors have disabilities. Some seniors are more at risk from achieving a swift and full recovery because they may be isolated and may not know about resources available. Most seniors have fixed incomes, and for both the homeowner and renters, some seniors, due to their fixed incomes, may not be able to absorb unexpected expenses from flood damages. Homes left unrepaired can breed mold, leading to health impacts, and seniors may be extra susceptible to health impacts from living in unhealthy environments and are less likely not able to recover from health impacts as quickly or at all compared to other population groups. The Fair Housing and Hurricane Season Resilient Outreach Grant is intended to target the following historically underserved communities. This includes communities of color, persons with limited English proficiency, persons with disabilities, seniors, immigrant communities, low and moderate income households, and vulnerable persons previously impacted or displaced by natural disasters. In the next few slides, we'll cover eligibility and the evaluation criteria for this grant. We are seeking organizations that have capacity to effectively execute outreach and education programs to those vulnerable communities. The organizations should be able to work at the neighborhood level to build knowledge and ensure that residents are better prepared for hurricane season and flooding disasters. This grant utilizes HUD's Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds, also known as CDBG. Selected groups will be reimbursed for all eligible costs according to federal regulations for fair housing activities, which include education and outreach to raise awareness around fair housing. And I just want to reiterate that this is a reimbursement-based grant, and all paid invoices, and receipts must be submitted. Each organization selected will receive a maximum of $10,000, and plans that exhibit exceptional creativity and planning may be awarded up to $15,000. For more information on government grant awards in general, please refer to the Code of Federal Regulations, Title II, Part 200. So after we cover some examples of eligible activities in the next few slides, we'll have a brainstorming session where you can share any ideas you may have for outreach activities. And you can submit your idea at any time using the comment feature here in Teams. Proposals may include any of the following activities. We have creating awareness in underserved communities about fair housing and flood preparedness, conducting educational workshops, trainings, and symposia about fair housing and flood preparedness, executing marketing campaigns about fair housing and flood preparedness using mixed media such as e-newsletters, testimonials, social media campaigns, or paid advertising. And finally, developing and distributing materials such as brochures, infographics, fact sheets, etc., that share important information about fair housing and flood preparedness. Fair housing outreach can include reaching underserved populations with hurricane preparation information so that they be more resilient in future disasters. It can also include combining information about fair housing, including the rights of protected classes, how to file a fair housing complaint with hurricane preparedness information. We know that outreach and resilience preparation tactics for underserved populations may be different than the wider population. For instance, flood preparation for many people without transportation or mobility issues may be different. There may be a need for new outreach materials for these underserved populations. Also, existing outreach materials may be needed in various languages that have not yet been translated. We'd like the new materials or translated materials to be something that can be used now and in the future to assist residents. Organizations may also want to work with and employ grassroots or other organizations that can reach a wider audience or in a different way with resilience and fair housing information. Due to the current pandemic, many ways of outreach and public engagement has happened in the past may not be effective this year. Organizations may want to use new media tactics to engage the public through electronic or with printed materials. Finally, if your organization has a case manager that works directly with residents, the organization may want to provide training for its staff members about fair housing and ways to overcome housing discrimination. This information could be incorporated into staff interactions with the public so that both staff and residents are more aware of fair housing discrimination and how to report it. These are just a few examples of how fair housing could be incorporated into outreach that you're already currently doing or that you may know needs to be done. At this time, we'd like to hear from you. It's okay if some of you may have the same activity, but you may think of other ways to incorporate fair housing in some things your organization may already be doing or needs that you may have already identified in the community. Don't forget, you can leave any questions you may have here in Teams using the chat feature, and we'll answer them later during the question and answer session immediately following the presentation today. So just a few examples of some ideas to kind of get your brain kind of going for the application. Ideas can include, for example, hosting a large community event with residents to provide resources or discuss preparation, or placing an ad in the community paper for 4 weeks in July about fair housing and hurricane preparation, or how to apply for FEMA assistance. So just a few examples that we have, and you can also still submit those if they come to mind, and we will mention them during the Q&A portion. So this slide just kind of explains our evaluation criteria and the priority we'll give applicants. Applicants that just demonstrate ability to reach and engage members from underserved communities. applicants that demonstrate experience with topics of community resilience, fair housing, and flood preparedness, that propose activities and engage with and benefit underserved communities, propose activities that are well planned and suitable for program goals, and that have long-term impact within the community. And finally, the applicants that incorporate existing community initiatives or relationships with other organizations. At this time, we'll transition into the procurement procedures and the application for this funding opportunity. In order to participate in the program, all organizations must be registered as a vendor for the City of Houston and actively registered in the System for Award Management. If you need to register as a vendor, or if you aren't sure if your organization is already registered, the Strategic Procurement website, purchasing.houstontx.gov, has helpful tools and resources available. Please note that you must have your EIN number, and all requests must be submitted with a W-9 form and on your company's letterhead. If you have any questions about registration, please contact Saeed at syed.taqvi@houstontx.gov or call telephone number 832-394-6306. In order to apply, you must also submit an application. These applications are fillable PDFs and are available online at houstontx.gov/housing. Components of the application include an overview of the organization, a section for your proposed activities and budget, and contact information. Please note that this proposal will go directly into a purchase order, which is a contract between your organization and the City of Houston, and it will also assist us with the selection process. So any information that you would like to include must be submitted in the application itself. July 20th is the deadline to apply, and all completed applications should be submitted to syed.taqvi@houstontx.gov. Here are a few key dates to keep in mind. As we mentioned earlier, the deadline to apply is July 20th. We'll be reviewing applications the week of July 21st, and awards will be announced the week of July 27th. Orientation for selected consultants will be on August 4th, and all work should be completed on November 30th. Here are just a few resources that may be useful when planning your activities. Ready.gov has information for hurricane preparation checklists, tip sheets, and videos. The State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry is a valuable resource for persons with disabilities or medical needs that do not have transportation or family and friends to help during an evacuation. The City of Houston's Office of Emergency Management provides emergency preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation coordination for the city. There, residents can sign up for emergency alerts and find any evacuation information there. Well, with this slide, we have concluded the Fair Housing and Hurricane Season Outreach Grant Introduction Workshop. At this time, we'll answer any questions you may have. Okay. So we have a question. The question was asked, in the amount reimbursed per program, is the amount reimbursed per program implemented or per fiscal year?
This funding will be reimbursed. The program will last through November 30th, and so we will need to receive all paid invoices to be reimbursed by November 30th. So that is the length of time for this program and for reimbursement.
Mary, we have another question, and it's, would Hurricane Supplies Drive be eligible for this grant? This is an event where water, batteries, non-perishable foods will be distributed to people in the community.
As long as this is part of an outreach drive or an outreach program that advertises fair housing and how to be prepared, small supplies would be eligible.
Thank you, Mary. I have another question, and it's what time on the 20th, on July 20th, does the deadline end? Deadline would say I wouldn't advise waiting until the last minute, but applications must be received by 11:59 p.m. How quickly will the reimbursement be processed upon receipt of invoice? It must be done 30 days. Yep. In 30 days. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. Would this be a program favorable for 501c3 nonprofits?
We are looking at nonprofits. You don't have to be a nonprofit, but we do encourage nonprofits to apply that can help augment and make outreach efforts better for your community members.
Okay, we have another question. Is this only for nonprofits? And what if an individual or law firm actually provided these services every year for over 10 years? Would this individual or law firm have to partner with the 501c3 to participate?
For corporations to apply, we do partnership opportunities such that the outreach can get to the community members. So we do encourage partnerships with nonprofit organizations.
Thank you, Mary. We've received yet another question, and the question is, are staff time and operational expenses eligible for reimbursement?
Yes, staff time is eligible for reimbursement, as long as it's included as part of your budget. We will also require backup information as a part of the reimbursement, which will include staff.
Okay. So I want to questions one more time. And the question is the amount reimbursed per year.
So the reimbursement will be based on the time period of this program, which will run through November 30th. So all expenses need to be paid, and paid invoices need to be submitted to our staff before the end of the program, November 30th. Reimbursements, as long as all of the information is received by staff, will take 30 days to be reimbursed. This is an outreach program, so it is the eligible CDBG activity is advertising and outreach. So rent and utility assistance is not included in this program. This is not a public services grant. This is for outreach and advertising for fair housing and disaster preparedness. I'm not sure if I understand the question, but yes, the person, the organization or entity that applies for the funding, that is the entity that will be reimbursed. So if the program is to hire other organizations to do some of the outreach work, that will be included in your application as a budget line item and explained in the application. And we will reimburse the organization that is selected for the grant, and that organization will be responsible to pay the other organizations if they're partnering with them.
Mary. Looks like we have covered all of the questions that were submitted to us. And if you are watching a recording of this, or if you want to revisit with any questions that you may have, please use the email on the screen. It's fairhousing@houstontx.gov, or you can call phone number 832-394-6355, and we will answer your question as you may have them. And one final question we've received is, where's the RFP located? So that information will be, if you have not received the RFP or the application, that information will be on the housing, on our HCDD webpage, at houstontx.gov/housing. And we'll also send the information for how to access the application and this recording, and also contact information in an email that you've used to register it today for this workshop. Please be on the lookout for that information as well.
So we encourage you just to utilize on your computer the PDF application and submit it that way.
Yes, thank you. Want to thank you again for attending, and we look forward to hearing your ideas and receiving your applications. Thank you very much.